Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the SumoSprings Solo Custom Helper Springs for the rear axle on a 2022 Chevy Silverado 1500. Trucks have become kind of daily drivers for a lot of people, and with that, they're really aiming for comfort. But when you need a truck to do truck things, as far as carry weight or tow a trailer, it can still do it. The thing is that comfort that they've designed has allowed the vehicle to really sag, and you're not going to get as much suspension travel. And a lot of that comes down to your jounce bumpers. It takes a long time for those to engage. Well, if you can engage them a little bit quicker, it's going to soften that blow, not only on normal driving, but also when that heavy load comes, the rear suspension is going to fight back with these SumoSprings in place, giving the suspension a fighting chance and just making a better overall towing experience. Because these are substantially taller than your factory jounce bumpers, it is going to engage a little bit quicker, but it is progressive. The microcellular design of these is really nice because it's going to soften any jarring blows, but when you have that weight, it's going to progressively fight back against that. So the more weight you put on it, the harder these are going to work. And if you're just normal driving around, you're still going to get a nice comfy ride. So what does this mean as far as lowering down that engagement point? Well, that means that the suspension is going to have that shock travel. So instead of being squished down and the shock can only move this much, you're giving it a little bit of support, and that way you still have a little bit more motion from your shock, which is also going to reduce the wear and tear on it when you have heavy loads on here. And also some added benefits, your front end is going to stabilize out, so your headlight beams are going to actually shine where they need to be. You're going to get some of that front end steering handling back as well, because generally as you have weight in the back, it's going to tilt it up. It gets a little bit light and squirrely, which when you have a heavy load isn't exactly the best thing. So it's going to help your suspension, your braking, your handling, and just headlight height. Overall, you're just going to have a better experience. And this is a quick, easy way to do it. A lot of people want airbags, and airbags are great, but these are really hard to beat, bang for buck, with zero maintenance. Now, these are rated at a 1,500 pound capacity, and that's not to say that you're going to gain that on your truck. So it's really just going to support up to that weight, which is really going to be great for really anything that you're loading up in the back of the truck or the weight putting down on the tongue weight with a trailer. Now we've gone ahead and loaded up a tote in the rear of the bed, and this is filled with water. It probably weighs about 1,500 pounds, and it's sitting right on over the axle of the truck, and you can see the squat is obviously pretty apparent. So we're going to take it out on the test course and see how it handles. On our test course, we're going to hit some bumps and just kind of do some parking lot driving to see how it's actually going to affect it. And honestly, the truck rides pretty good, I'll admit that. It definitely feels like there's weight in the back, because there is. The front, the steering is a little bit squirrelier just because you don't have that contact patch. It's kind of just tilting the truck back. And the rear definitely is kind of has a sagging feeling to it. It just kind of feels like it's lugging behind. But overall, I mean, the truck's doing a fine job, but also the suspension's going to be getting a workout. You're not getting that movement of the shocks because it's going to be compressed. And so that's really going to make for a rougher ride. And right now, as I'm hitting just small bumps, I do kind of notice the truck just kind of feels like it's getting tugged from behind, almost like I'm pulling a trailer, and that's just weight in the bed. So hopefully our rear suspension enhancement should really bump that back up, give our suspension a fighting chance, and just be able to allow the truck to support that weight a little bit more. I'm going to do a quick slalom, just kind of side to side, just to kind of really stress the suspension from one side to the other, kind of put that weight on it. And it does, like I said, the front, the steering feel is a little bit more numb than when it was when it didn't have weight in it, and that's kind of to be expected. But that's something that I've noticed when putting rear suspension enhancement in, is you really gain that back, and that overall will just give you a better driving experience. So now that we've gone ahead and kind of tested it with weight in the back and really saw how it's going to act when it has that weight on its stock, we're going to see the difference. We'll pull the truck in the bay, we're going to get our SumoSprings installed, and that's really where it's going to shine. When we get those on, we come back out here, and it should be a night and day difference. Now, to do this installation, we are going to need to raise up the rear suspension or the truck, and that way the suspension opens up for us, allowing us to get our springs in place. So I'm on obviously a lift, so I'll be using a trans jack on the hitch. If you're doing this at home and don't have a lift, you can just simply make sure you chalk the front tires. You can put a floor jack on your hitch. If you don't have a hitch, you can find a solid mount on the frame and just raise this up. And really all you're trying to do is open up that window for us to be able to get the old ones out and the new ones in. So to remove our factory jounce stops, we're going to make sure that we have a 10mm socket on a ratchet. You will probably need an extension here as well. And we're just going to kind of undo the bolt that bolts this into the frame rail. Pretty easy here. Now that we have this one off, we'll go ahead and take off the other side as well. Now taking a look at our SumoSprings, we do have this spacer here, and this is to add a little bit more preload so it's going to engage faster. It's up to you if you want to use it. If you regularly haul a heavy payload or a trailer, I would suggest putting this in there. It is going to engage a little bit faster. But if not, if you still want to add a little bit of comfort or retain that comfort and you don't tow that often, you can opt out to not use this. It's kind of up to you. But either way, here's your factory jounce bumper, and here's what we're putting on. So either way, it's going to engage quicker. This is just going to allow that to do a little bit faster and have those shocks preloaded up. And they're not going to be squished down before this engages. So to get this in place, either way, if you're using the spacer or not, you are going to be using this washer. This is just going to slide here. And then if you do opt to use the spacer, that'll go on top. Now there are two different bolts, and that's to account for that spacer. So since we're going to be putting ours in, our neighbor tows some pretty heavy loads here. So I'll be taking this, passing it through, and it's going to be a 17mm socket. I'm going to go ahead and use a shallow one. Now if you are using the spacer, that bolt, you kind of have to thread it through. It does fit. So with a shallow socket, that way it pushes on the head of the bolt. You can go ahead and just kind of thread this through, and that's going to allow us to get our threads in. And this is just going to go where that factory bolt was previously on the factory jounce bumpers. But before we put this in place, we are going to want to use the included blue Loctite that's in the kit, which is a nice little added feature. So just get your threads with that Loctite on. And then we're going to put this up. I'm going to get this tightened down just with a ratchet, and then we'll come back with our torque wrench. Torque settings are found in the instruction manual. It's not terribly too high here, but this is going to make sure that it's going to be tight enough long term to where it's not going to become loose, but also it's not going to be too tight, putting stress on the threads. So if you need a torque wrench, we have them here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. Now to get your extension out, you might notice that it is kind of tight here. So you can either raise the suspension up a little bit more. These are flexible, so if you need to, you can kind of just make it work here, and then you should be good. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now with those both properly torqued down, the installation is complete. We just need to lower our vehicle back down, load it back up with weight, and test to see how it does. And it is still squatting, which is kind of to be expected, but it's noticeably better, and that's because it's engaging on those a lot sooner than those factory jounce. So let's take it out and see how it handles. Oh man, already huge difference. I can barely tell there's weight in the back. The rear end just seems heavier duty. For a 1500, you know, they're great trucks, but with weight, you really start to notice their shortcomings as far as suspension. This is way better, way better. And steering feel, super confident. Like I said, I can see the tote of water kind of sloshing around in the back, but right now, I wouldn't know the difference if there was weight in here or not. Now, let's go ahead. We'll do the slalom real quick, and that's going to kind of engage side to side. And that's another benefit, too, is it's going to really reduce the amount of sway, again, because it's initiating. So kind of like a sway bar, it's going to want to fight against it to bring it back to center. And this is, yeah, night and day difference. This is really good. The ride quality, too, alone is, you know, we're allowing that suspension to work a little bit more because it has support, and it is a lot more comfortable. Again, it just feels like the truck can handle the weight, no problem. Whereas before, it kind of did feel like that trailer was behind it and just kind of lugging behind. So definitely a huge improvement. And that was a look and installation of the SumoSprings Solo Custom Helper Springs for the rear axle on a 2022 Chevy Silverado 1500.